Welcome to the Main Street Minute with equestrian marketing expert India Wilkinson. This is the destination for all things equestrian, from horse sales, breeding, horse health, and a look into the intricacies of the horse business world. Join India as she dives in with industry leaders to discuss the challenging and rewarding lifestyle of being in the equestrian world. And get ready for the Main Street Minute.
Hi there, this is India Wilkinson with the Main Street Minute, and today I am super excited to invite Jazz Napravnik with Unleash Your Inner Rider. And today we're going to talk about mental health and mindset coaching, which is what Jazz has expertise in. So Jazz, I am so excited to have you here today. I think this is a very, very important topic. So before we get started, I want to just kind of explain how I know you. You have been a very loyal supporter of my platform, Main Street Market. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about, is that you're in this. You own horses, you compete, you train, you sell, you fox hunt, you do all the things. You're in it with the rest of us. So I think that's important that you're coming from a place of understanding what we all deal with, as amateurs or as professionals in this industry. So why don't you explain to us about what you do in your mindset coaching business?
Yeah, India, thank you so much for having me on. I think mental health and mindset is so important and has been missing in the equestrian industry for a very long time. It's starting to become more, making people more aware of how important mindset is. And I'm really excited that people are starting to understand that it's not just something that's nice to have, but something that is as essential as the right horse underneath of you and the proper tack you're sitting in. So what do I do? Well, I help riders overcome their fears and essentially get out of their own way. I can take you back into my journey. I started off as a really young professional, and I have a very strong work ethic. I'm not afraid to put in the hours. I'm not afraid to put in the work. And I was grinding away with very little momentum, constantly felt like my wheels were spinning in the sand and I wasn't getting ahead. And anyone that knows me can always tell you that I've always been a positive person and I've always tried to look on the bright side of things. But that doesn't mean that I didn't have self-doubt. I didn't have those times where that negative voice in your head says you're not good enough, or you shouldn't be doing this, or, I was in my early 20s when I first went out in my business. Should you just go back to school and get another degree? So I decided that there had to be a better way. And for me, I ended up finding my own life coach, really. She had nothing to do with horses. Actually, she did barrel race in her youth, but really wasn't involved in horses in any way anymore. And she really taught me about mindset, and that it's not just the thoughts you think necessarily and what you do on the surface. It is so deeply ingrained in you from the time you're a small child. And that if you don't get to the root cause of what is creating the challenge or the problem or the reality that's not working for you, you're really not going to get shifts. And so what I help my riders do is I help them find the root cause. And we call that their subconscious programming. And that is actually instilled in someone when they're very young. And I'm talking like under 6, most of their core beliefs, those root beliefs, are created when you're a really young kid and you're trying to figure out how to operate in the world, if you will. You're trying to figure out how to survive. And a lot of times that can lead to people pleasing. I think a lot of us can relate to being a people pleaser, not wanting to ruffle feathers. And each individual is different. The way they experience an event and the way they interpret what's happening in their environment around them is different for each individual. So I can't say, if this happened to you when you were a kid, then you'll have this belief. But I can tell you through now I think I'm in my 7th or 8th year of coaching professionally, equestrian specifically, that most of those core beliefs come down to I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm not enough, of some variation. And what's happening is the people that I coach, because horse people are my people. I've literally been riding longer than I've been walking. I think there's that, you know, uniqueness, that kinship that we all have. It's in the blood, if you will, right? We've all heard that, you know, horses are in our blood. There's something special about us. And what is that specialness? And in my own journey, I sought out a therapist to see if I could figure out my struggles and figure that out. And one of the things I discovered was you'd spend most of your session trying to explain to them the nuances and how the horse thing is affecting you, and you actually never get to the point that you're trying to get across so that they can help you. So working with equestrians, my clients can skip all that. You know, when they're talking about seeing a distance or trying to remember a dressage test or just the fear of judgment. I mean, we pay people to judge us every weekend and we wonder why we feel judged, right? But my clients don't have to explain that to me or, you know, explain to me, you know, when they're dealing with severe financial struggles, why selling the horse just isn't an option. Or, you know, when an abscess pops and, you know, how disappointing that can be when it's on a Friday before the show that weekend. So you get to skip explaining all of that. We just get down to the nitty gritty. And the coolest thing about the way that I help my clients, and it's a little different than therapy because I'm not a therapist. I want to make that perfectly clear. I do have a degree in psychology, but I am not a therapist. I'm not a licensed counselor. I am a mindset coach. But the cool thing is when you get to the root belief, and like I said, most root beliefs have something to do with being unworthy, not enough, not lovable, that when you untangle that, when you shift it, when you change it, not only does it help you in your riding or in your professional horse life, but it helps you in all areas of your life. It's just that the piece that's challenging in your horse life is the one that was loud enough to make you do something about it, to seek professional help to make that change. But if you have, you know, if you're someone, maybe an adult amateur, and your horse seems to run you over all the time, like they're just pushy, you probably have that sort of dynamics either with your significant other, at your day job, with your kids, something like that, or there's going to be similar things. So we can address the fruits, we can address each individual problem, or we can dive right down to the core, the root part of the problem and change that. And then all the fruits change. So change the root, change the fruit sort of thing. So if you can figure out what's the belief that's holding me back from accomplishing the goals I want to accomplish in my riding, and you can shift that belief, well, that's going to make you feel so much more worthy in your relationships, at work, with your significant other, with your family, and with your finances. None of us are here think horses are cheap, okay? We're not going to lie. We love them, but they're expensive. And that's one of the number one things, particularly like equestrian professionals, whether it's a riding instructor or a trainer, finances weigh heavily. And the love for the sport and the love for the horses is only going to take you so far. Money is a legitimate factor. But your lack of funds is tied to a core belief you have, or we could call it a money block that you have. So when you can discover those core beliefs, you can shift those money blocks and actually allow so much more financial abundance to come to your way. That was a huge thing for me because one of my core beliefs was that, and we could get into this, I could just dive into this forever, but one of my core beliefs was that I didn't, and here's the tricky thing. Our conscious beliefs don't always match our subconscious beliefs. So my conscious beliefs is like, yeah, I want lots of money, then I can buy more horses, then I can get more horse shows. My subconscious beliefs were people with a lot of money were greedy. Then you go to greedy people are bad. We can all sort of somehow agree on that, right? Um, and so my subconscious would then not allow me to experience financial abundance beyond being able to afford my bare minimums because I had that conflicting belief. And your
Wow.
subconscious is like 90% of your manifesting power. It's 90% of the reality that you're seeing. Your conscious mind is about 10%, which really makes things difficult. But when you learn all this, and who teaches this? Like, we don't teach little kids this. This should be taught in kindergarten. What you believe is what you create. But once you understand all this, and you can, sometimes it's just enough to have the awareness of it to shift that belief. You're like, oh, look at that. Or, yeah, how many of us heard growing up, money doesn't grow on trees, when you're a little kid in the toy store and you want this, that, and the other thing, right? Or, maybe it's just your parents didn't want to buy you the umpteenth thing and you're like, oh, we don't have money for that. Those little statements, as innocent as they are and as well intended as they are, can actually create these root beliefs that then affect you your whole life. So that one simple statement could be like, I'm not worthy of having nice things, or I'll never have enough money. And when that takes root, if you don't do something about it, if you don't actively do something to shift and change or release that belief, it will drive your entire life.
Wow. It's really fascinating just, listening to you and thinking about just reflecting in my own. And I'm not a professional, I'm professional amateur, as I would say. Um, but just being willing to sacrifice things in order to pay for the horses and just things that, like you said, I call them normal people. So that might be, there's normal people and horse people that normal people really don't understand. And I think I've always felt that, and I know you do too. There's just a different collective support system within the equestrian world that is different than I think in any other sports, because we are dealing with animals and the expense, and it's just, and I know other sports are very expensive, but it's just really different when things are completely out of your control, things that happen. And when you were saying that, I started thinking about a couple of different things, and one is this kind of stigma. I mean, it's gotten so much better, people talking about their mental health. It's gotten so much better. And thank goodness for top riders like Stefan Peters, who is open about his own struggles, because I think that for people who may not deal with that severity of depression, can say, oh, if he can talk about it, I can talk about this. And so I would love for you to talk about, like, when is the right time? When is the right time to say, hey, I think I need some help? Because one of the things that I see just in a lot of young riders and a lot of young trainers is they have no boundaries. They'll work, 18 hours a day, and then they'll go pick up a horse for someone, and they're always saying yes, trying to build their businesses, but at the same time, they're just exhausted. And, like, to me, that's a good time to talk to you, and boundaries alone, I mean, I can say that at my age that I have been able to enforce really strong boundaries, and I'm confident in that in my business. 30 years ago, I don't know that I was that, that came with time, but I would love to have had your help a long time ago, to not make the mistakes that I did. So when is the right time to talk to you as a coach, as a mindset coach?
Anytime, really, whether it's, the best time is when your problems are the smallest and when you're at your youngest, because we have the least to undo. I mean, that's
Hmm.
the best time. And actually, quite frankly, I think the best time is getting to little kids, teaching them, but any time is the right time. And even if you've been riding for decades upon decades, it's not too late either. So that's the other thing I encounter. I encounter a couple resistance. Um, One of them is my problems aren't big enough. You'll compare yourself to people that really struggle. It's kind of like I've got first world problems and there's people starving, right? That's not untrue, but you not making your life better doesn't make someone whose life is if we're going to quantitate it, worse than yours, better. Okay, so you suffering isn't making someone else suffer less. You helping yourself is actually, and this is one of the magical pieces that I love, actually will give permission to the people around you that see you taking the action and setting the example to ask for help themselves. So particularly if if you're a trainer or a professional in some way, and you're very open about you don't always have it together in your head. You have additional support, whether that's your spouse who's just always got your back, your best friend, or a professional that can really help you and give you objective feedback. That's the difference between having a professional coach and having your friend coach you, is you're really getting objective feedback that isn't skewed by someone's perception, who knows a lot more details. And although that can definitely be beneficial, having that objective and the professional perspective really can open your eyes, because we all only know what we know. And as a professional, this is things I've studied, and I've studied case studies, and I see clients, and every time I see and work with a new client, I learn more too. And so I have this plethora of knowledge and experiences and examples of other people's experiences that I can then help and relate to you. So it's never too early. It's never too late. And you're never too, what's the other one I get is, oh, I'm just a casual rider. That's for people that are really competitive. No, it's not. It's for everybody. I have a dear client who got into riding later. I think she was in her mid-30s when she started riding, and timid, and started out Western and then switched to English. And, she was like, on a brave day, she was trotting, let's put it this way, in the ring. And she really wanted to kind of keep up with her friends at the barn. So she started working with me, and we worked through a lot of different core beliefs that she had. And again, a lot of them had nothing to do with horses. They all had to do with either her childhood or her family life or something to do with that. And one day she called me, and I'll never forget this because I still use this phrase today. She goes, "Chad, you won't believe it. I cantered in the wild." What does that mean?
I love it.
And she cantered outside the ring, and she was so excited. So now sometimes I refer to anything outside the ring as in the wild.
Yeah.
But that just shows you what her perspective was of how scary it was to be outside the ring. It was in the wild. If I think I'm in the wild, I'm like in some safari in Africa. I've never been to Africa. That's the wild for me, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Cross country and being toted around on a leader by my mom. And so anytime is the right time. Anytime you want to get on your horse and not have that anxiety. Anytime you want to get on the horse and not have that fear. Anytime you want to say yes to joining your friends instead of making an excuse. Anytime you want to level up your business. And I've worked with everyone from the client I just mentioned, who was, just creating enough courage to trot inside the ring, to professionals who are finding the courage to ask for people to sponsor horses for them to ride professionally, or syndicate horses. And how do you go about that? And I'm not the lawyer to help you with that, but I am the one to help you discover, okay, what are your limiting beliefs that are keeping you frozen, or keeping you from taking the next step, or keeping you from picking up the phone and calling that owner that maybe has horses with Boyd Martin, and you're like, no, I'm not Boyd Martin, or I'm not, whomever, and think, why not me? Why not me? And so anytime you have that self-doubt, that's a good time to call me.
I love that. I think I want to bring up something that I hear. I used to hear it a lot when I evented. So I came from the eventing world into the dressage world. And a couple of things that I would hear while I was eventing was, well, she's only doing beginner novice, or she's only doing novice, or, um, I'm going to drop down to training because it's so easy before like you would hear these things. And there's a lot of shame actually in that because, like, for me, I loved being at beginner novice. For me to come, to be able to come from the hunter ring a million years ago and then to be in the wild, eventing and fox hunting. And I was good. I was winning and I was happy and I wasn't stressed. And I loved the program and I had a full-time job and a child. And I always felt like I had to explain that because, oh, well, you're only doing beginner novice. My trainer didn't treat me like that at all. It wasn't that. She's phenomenal. And but I think just as equestrians, we have to watch our language too, when we say things like that, because it just would always hit me. Like I was, there was some kind of a totem pole. And even though I was winning at beginner novice and, area three, the whole thing, and then another client was at training and was falling off and wasn't doing well and was stressed out. But she felt that client felt like she was better because she was at training, and I think that that's something that we just have to be very aware of as we speak, because I can see I probably needed you then, like, and I'm a very confident writer, and but I can see how that could have really affected someone like me. And then I hear, and I switched over to dressage. And I love it. Like I love it's so cerebral for me. I love the precision of it. But I would hear people say, well, now she's just doing dressage. I'm like, well, it was way harder than anything I did when I was eventing, I mean, to really be competitive. But I think those tiny words are so powerful. She's only doing dressage and, and only at beginner novice. And that's just, it's such a vulnerable place to be because that could shift someone from being so happy and confident and having the best time to I'm not worthy, right? Which is exactly where you're going. Um, and it never stopped me. I was just kind of like, whatever, you keep falling off your horse at training and I'll keep going, collecting my blue ribbons. But, like, how do you respond to that when you're someone, I just never did. But how do you help someone that's in that kind of situation?
How do I help someone?
Yeah,
Yeah, so, you touched on something. Words are powerful. Words are so incredibly powerful. And they're also keys or clues to what your inner beliefs are. So when you're using phrases like only doing dressage or just at beginner novice, that's already cluing me into what your core belief is going to be.
hmm,
And, you know, whether you're a professional saying this horse is only at beginner novice, it even and the horse might be 4. Great, the horse is at beginner novice at 4. But it also just tells you it's that little snippet that says, I have a belief about what being at beginner novice means.
hmm.
Because there's another rider that goes, I got all the way to beginner novice.
Right, right.
So those words are very telling. And the biggest question is it bothering you? Is there even a little bit nagging on you when you say, I'm only at beginner novice, or someone else says to you, oh, you're only going beginner novice? Well, my suggestion there when you're hearing it from other people about yourself, again, the words are clues to what their core beliefs are.
Right.
Okay. And so people that need to put others down are doing so to pick themselves up.
Right.
And it's not always conscious by any means. It's not always intentional by any means. But it is telling that there's a belief. It's either a belief about the thing or the belief about themselves.
Hmm.
It's really nothing to do with you. They're just using you to move themselves around and make themselves feel more comfortable. And we all are guilty of this. Now, I've been doing this for a long time now. And so I'm very I'm much more aware of my own sense of self. But even I can be guilty of, using those phrases or um, comparing myself to others every now and then. But I also have a strong conscious awareness to catch myself and be like, oh, maybe I should do a little meditation or journal about this and see what little inner wound still has a little scratch on it that I might need to
Hmm.
do some healing on. Um, and so it's really important that, and one I'll give your listeners one of my favorite tools that I tell all my clients when it comes to the power of words. Imagine you have a genie sitting on your shoulder. And unlike the genie in Aladdin, this genie gives you unlimited wishes. But there's a catch. And the catch is he makes come true everything that you say. So when you say, oh goodness, it's windy out, my horse is going to be really spicy today,
Yeah.
the genie
Yeah.
goes, okay, here's your spicy horse,
Yeah.
right? Um, or this course looks really hard. I don't know if I'm going to get my distances. Okay, let's make sure you mess up your distances, or you put a 4 in the 5 or a 5 in the 6 or whatever it is. And another thing I wanted to go back to when you were talking about boundaries, a lot of people think boundaries are about how other people treat them. And on one level, that's true. But more importantly, it's about how you treat yourself.
Hmm.
And what are your boundaries for yourself? Because through our actions and knowing our own boundaries, we teach other people how to treat us. So if you're the person that's like, I'm tired and I really need to rest, but someone asks you to do something and you say, rest can wait, let me go please this person, you're teaching that person that they can use you regardless of your own personal well-being.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. It's really
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
And people that get walked on basically invite people to walk on them.
Hmm.
Okay. And there is, and I was just having this conversation with my marketing team actually, because we're going to be launching a new program, um, kind of for professional grooms and working students, that sort of person in the industry. And I speak very generally, not specifically at all, but there is that belief that, your working students are slave labor. And yeah, horses, yes, sometimes you have to get up at 3 a.m. for a horse show. Yes, sometimes you're still working till 11, but those shouldn't be every day, all days. And until we start setting our own boundaries as a collective, the industry won't change.
Right.
All it takes is saying no. No, I need rest. No, I can't work 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of my life. That's not okay. And people get into this scarcity mindset and they're very fearful. Well, if I don't, then they're going to speak ill of me. If I don't, I'll lose my job. Well, that might be true, but that only means that it's not aligned with you and it's not for you. There's something better out there. But we get programmed from an early age that this is the best it's going to be. And we disrespect ourselves and then we invite others to do the same.
Yeah, so powerful. I mean, boundaries are it's actually, I read something recently and I thought about this too, because it's like boundaries are actually very freeing. Once you put them in place, it's really, you take a deep breath. Like I don't work on Sundays. I don't. And I have people that'll email me and I haven't heard back from you. I'm like, well, there's no emergency and I don't work on Sundays. And I'm
Yeah.
not, there's nothing aggressive about that. I get to the back to, and I have an automated message and someone will be back in touch with you on Monday morning. But I had to put that boundary in place a long time ago because it was just eating into my marriage, into my family life, into everything. And it's very freeing. I'm like Chick-fil-A. I don't work on Sundays, and I'm like, if a multi-billion-dollar company can do it, then I can do it. And I think that that's how it's not easy though, because it's like, well, it's just an email, it's just a response, but it isn't. It's takes space up in your mind and something could be stressful and then that takes over and so it's like it's a small boundary, but it's pretty powerful. And now people are like, she didn't work on Sundays,
Yeah, and they accept it and no one challenges it, or
No.
maybe the oddball, but you're not even thinking about that one.
Right.
And there you are.
Yeah, I love
You're,
that. So, what's your favorite part about being a mindset coach? It's got to be so rewarding to see people have those light bulb moments.
it is so rewarding. So on my own personal journey, I mean, no one would have said I was a type that you would have called a victim. Okay, we know those people that are like, oh, victim, everything happens to me, woe is me. But what I didn't realize is I actually did have a victim mindset. And that because I believed that things outside of me that were out of my control were affecting my life. And the reality is the outside is a reflection of your inside. And if you want the outside to change, you have to change on the inside. And when you realize that that's really the source of everything, what's inside of you, your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings, it's very empowering, but you can no longer be the victim to anything outside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my favorite thing about this is when I learned that, my life did a 180 and I experienced joy like I didn't know joy existed. I experienced freedom like I didn't know freedom existed. And granted, I thought I had all these things. That's the funniest part. I thought I was all these things. It was like I found the secret to life,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't keep it to myself. I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. So I found a way to basically do that. And I've also had to rein myself in and remind me that everyone's on their individual journey. And having this new perspective, it's like I can see all your problems. It's like having a sixth sense, like a second sight. But I've had to rein myself in and allow people to ask me to help them instead of impose myself on them. Because everyone's on their own journey and not everyone's ready for change. And that is okay. That is absolutely okay. And I check myself a lot with my friends too, because they'll ask one question and I'll go on for 15 minutes. And I'm like, where for the unsolicited advice? And most of the time,
Like, let me fix you. Let me fix you.
They're appreciative or, accepting of me. But I have learned to rein myself in, and I'm very conscientious of, was I asked for what I'm about to say or was I not asked?
Yeah.
So my favorite thing is watching people just absolutely transform their life. And it's like those aha moments and I get it now. I get it now. And at one point I was going to become a licensed psychiatrist and get my PhD and follow that route. And this is certainly not to be offensive to any therapists or psychiatrists out there. And I think it comes more from it comes from real life too. I've talked to people that have been in therapy for 20 years. They work with me once or twice and like, you've helped me more than the therapy in 20 years. And one of the things that is very important to me is that you're ready to change. I'm very much a solution person. And so not everyone's ready for the solution. Some people just want to talk about the problems, and that's okay. That's totally okay. You can talk about your problems all day long. I want to know what the problem is only so I can help you find the solution. And so that's my favorite part about working with clients, because all the clients I work with, all the clients I have as private clients, and there's a whole application, a process to that, they are ready to do the work. They are ready to change. So I get to see these aha moments, these huge shifts, and I am able to help them learn the tools so they have this whole toolbox to move forward without seeing me every week. My goal is to work myself out of a job. Mm-hmm. My goal is to give you the tools so you can succeed, not to see you every week for the rest of your life.
Right.
And so watching them transform their life and then hearing them or hearing someone else say, hey, so and so said they were working with you and taught me this thing, and it's really helped me. And maybe I've never worked with that person or never met that person, but that gets me excited because someone's paying it forward.
Yeah.
There's no way in the world I could coach every equestrian.
Right.
So my hope is that if you're my client, I give you the tools and you tell your friends some of these tools that apply to them, and they tell their friends, and the whole collective is lifted up and smiling brighter and feeling better about themselves, Especially, I really worry about the younger generation that grew up with social media because we put out there our best selves and we compare others' best selves to our worst self. And that's not a fair comparison on any day.
No.
And, we don't need to be comparing ourselves to anyone. We can use other people's successes as inspiration, but not as comparison to say, I'm less than.
Right. Something that you said that really I loved about joy, because I think sometimes, and especially, and I can only speak to my world and my vending world and now my dressage world, just that striving to be perfect and working hard and working hard and working hard and striving to be perfect and losing the fun in it because it's supposed to be fun. And I think sometimes people say that flippantly, like, hey, it's supposed to be fun. But we are doing this because we love the horses, and there should be joy in that and celebrating. I've been with amazing trainers, thank goodness that it probably because I did manifest that I would only work with these types of trainers, but they celebrate those milestones as we go. And that, like, I love that. It's such a serotonin hit for me to hear good job, and that could be just a good leg yield in the corner. But finding those coaches, as amateurs, finding those coaches that celebrate that and make it fun and make you feel successful at the end of every lesson or whatever in your work, or maybe you don't have a great show but you nailed your dressage test, and maybe like just finding joy in those things. And I picked up on what you said about that because I think sometimes people forget that in this business.
Yeah, we all get into it because we love it or there's something that brings us joy about it. But when your cup is empty, your proverbial cup is empty, it's hard to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And horse trainers are notorious for being dehydrated, hungry, hangry, overworked, no rest, all of the above. And I've certainly been guilty of them. But through doing this work for myself, I rest when I need rest. I eat when I'm really hungry. Sometimes I forget to eat, I'll admit it. Sometimes I'm woozy before I'm like, oh, yeah, I should remember to eat. But it's not like I'm skipping it intentionally because I'm prioritizing something else.
Right.
I literally haven't been sick in 13 years now.
Wow.
Because I take the rest when I need the rest. It's the same as your horse.
Right.
Your horse has a little bit of heat in its leg. You don't go run it cross country. You might ice it for a couple days and then it's a non-issue. But if you pushed it, you go and bow a tendon. You might have a little cold and you're like, I can push through it. And I'm telling you, there was a time I was proud of how hard I could work when I was the sickest. And that is not a healthy thing to do.
No,
not at all. But there was a belief that I had that hard workers are good people. Now, I'm not going to say that's incorrect, but the way the belief was formed in my subconscious, well, if hard workers are good people, harder workers must be better people. And if you're a hard worker, then you don't rest. And if you need rest, then you must be less than. So I can't rest for, someone might think I'm less than, or God forbid, I think I'm less than. So you see how that plays out in this wonky,
it really makes sense the way that you explain that. Yeah.
Right. So that's why I say on the surface level, you might think one thing, but on the subconscious level, you're driven by something that's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And that's why the subconscious needs to be addressed. And not only the subconscious, but the body, because your cells hold memories. So this is something that happens a lot when I have clients that have fears, particularly clients overcoming trauma, riding accidents, something like that. The energy of the event, the emotion that event created, the energy of that emotion will get stuck and lodged in your cells in your body.
Wow.
And as long as that energy is there, and it can be there for a week, days, decades, doesn't matter. It's there until it's been processed and moved out. It will be triggered. So no matter how much it's safe to go on a trail ride again, or you're going to be fine jumping that course, your body says, and that energy, and what's happening is the past is now imposed in the present moment in your mind. So you're experiencing these sensations and the feelings and the emotions that you're experiencing in your body are actually the past emotions that are still stuck in your body coming up in the present moment.
Wow.
You want to hear a quick story?
Yeah.
Years and years ago, I had a client come to me, and I created this group for women with fears around riding. And she called me and she said, would you do like a group call with this group of women that I have? I said, sure. And so we got on the call, and she started to explain this accident that she had. She was going to go on a trail ride and with some friends. And so they get to the parking lot, wherever they go, and they unload the horses. She gets on the horse, and as she sits down, the horse flies backwards, flips over a guardrail, and she gets sent to the hospital.
My gosh.
Freak accident, right? And that had happened about 20 years prior to our Zoom call. And so we did some energy work. And that's one thing you'll know about me is I work very intuitively. So explaining my process can be very tricky because it's so unique and individualized. And so I said, you still have the energy of that experience stuck in your body. So we did this body scan, and she says, I feel it in my left hand. Why is it in our left hand? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. And we did the process of removing the energy from her left hand. And she's like, I can feel it. I felt it. It left. She felt this physical sensation. Well, we came to find out that the horse had been bitten by a black widow spider in the trailer on the way to where they were trail riding. She had placed her left hand exactly where the bite had been when she went to get on the horse.
Wow.
And so that energy had been stuck in her left hand for 20 years now. And she had not trail ridden since. She loved trail riding. She hadn't trail ridden in 20 years. She wouldn't leave the ring. And after our session, I think that little clearing took 15 minutes. She called me the next day and she said, I went on a 3-hour trail ride.
Oh.
The energy of that experience was no longer inhibiting her and creating that past being imposed on the present sensation and keeping her from trail riding. And she's trail riding to this day. And I think she's a hypnotist now, helping people overcome fears. And it's one of my favorite stories.
I love that.
And so that's just an example of how something so simple can easily be erased. Now, I don't want to mislead any of your listeners and say I can cure any of your fears.
Right.
But it also can happen that quickly. It just all depends on whatever the individual's experiences are and where it takes us.
That's amazing. I could literally talk to you for hours. I mean, this is so fascinating. And I think that it's so great. I love your posts. I love what you put out. You're very generous about, what you share with equestrians, which is really cool. So if somebody did want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
UnleashYourInnerRider.com is the best way to do it. You can also email me directly at jazz@jazzthelifecoach.com.
I love it. Well, thank you for being with us today. I know that this is going to spark a lot of conversations, and I think that is a great step in the right direction for all of us, everywhere, but especially in the equestrian world. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm very accessible. You can find me all over social media, and please don't feel like you can't reach out to me directly.
I love it. All right. Thanks so much.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please let us know. Email support@mainstreetmarket.com. Please share and join us again next week for another episode of the Main Street Minute, right here on the Equus Radio Network.